Cerebral palsy is a condition that results from a damage to a part of the brain that controls motor movement. Cerebral itself talks about brain, and palsy talks about muscles. So put the two together, we're looking at a situation where that part of the brain that sends motor signals to parts of the body that need to move your muscles is damaged. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's totally dead, which is why you find people affected in the various ways, but it just means that the individual is unable to control optimally the movements of his or her muscles.
Is a disorder that affects the movement, the posture, or the tone of an individual, usually as a result of a damage or an injury that's been done to a developing immature brain. Usually it would occur before, some occurs before birth, while the baby is still in the womb, while for some others it occurs around birth. Standard definition usually covers the time of the birth, the time of the child being in the womb, to about maximum of 3 years old. Simply put, it means there's a damage or injury to this brain that is still developing that results in a dysfunction in movement of that child, or the posture or the tone. When we say tone, we're referring to how rigid or how flexible that child or the group of muscles is in that child. So it depends on the extent of the damage. That would also determine the extent of the symptoms you will see in that child as regards to movement, posture, and tone. For most cerebral palsies, we don't get to diagnose them until the child is an infant. The infant is between delivery to about 1 year old, and for some preschool, because that's where you get to start seeing the signs and the symptoms of them. If you have a child before the age of 1 that is predominant, already has a preference of what handedness they're going to be, that could be a red flag. Ideally, most children start to choose what hand they decide to use above 1 year. So if you have an infant who already decides, who's already choosing, who's preferring to use one side of the body or the other, that gives you a red flag that this child could have cerebral palsy.
The concept of cerebral palsy is wrapped in mystery, so to speak, as not so much is still known about the condition.
What causes cerebral palsy? There could be genetic abnormality in the development of this brain. So for the child, there is no injury, so to speak, from the outside. It is just a dysfunction in the genetic makeup of the development of the brain. So the child is born with that defect already, and then there's a problem with the muscle tone, with the rigidity, with the posture. While for some mothers, it could be as a result of an infection to the mother while being pregnant of the child, and then that affects the development of the baby. Commonly we have viruses like herpes virus affecting the mother, measles, rubella, and Zika virus. If the infection affects the mother to a point where it is transferred to the child, it could in some cases lead to a malfunction in development of that child, in the brain of that child, which could now show up later on as a defect in the muscle tone. Also, around the delivery of the baby, tenuous and strenuous delivery process, prolonged ones, where the child there's an issue with the delivery of oxygen to the brain. The developing brain, the neonate or the new baby's brain cannot survive without oxygen. It is highly dependent on oxygen. So if there's a delay in the delivery of oxygen, that during the resuscitation of the child or the separation of the child from the mother, or during the delivery, it depends. For example, when the child is not well positioned and coming out during the delivery process, that could lead to a delay or a disruption in the flow of oxygen to that brain, and then we could have a damage to the brain. For some babies also, the pregnancy was fine, there was no genetic problem, and then delivery also fine. Then they get infected either by bacteria that cause meningitis or encephalitis. Meningitis is an infection that affects the covering of the brain, or encephalitis is an infection that infects the brain substance. That also could lead to a damage to that brain because it's still developing, and then the aftermath is seen as cerebral palsy affecting the posture, the movements of that child.
This condition is not contagious. It is not infectious, and it has no cure.
Once we accept our limits, we go beyond them is a popular saying of Albert Einstein. Same is the story of Tobiloba Ajayi, a Nigerian lawyer called to bar at 23, a solicitor, an author, and advocate living with cerebral palsy. Toby's life exemplifies the possibility for every child with disability to achieve their life's dreams and biggest goals.
I like to say that I'm a disability management advocate with a special focus on inclusive education for children with cerebral palsy. And people ask me, like, why cerebral palsy? And I always say, well, the answer is pretty simple. It's because I live with cerebral palsy myself. When I was about 3, I got enrolled into the educational system. I went through primary school. I actually went through the Gifted Children's Program, which is like for the really smart kids. Yeah. And in 2011, I went off to get a master's in international law. And in the process, I wrote my first book, then wrote 2 more books after that. So I'm a 3-time published author. And then in 2016, I got on the Mandela Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders. And I did get on the Yali Network for West African Leaders in 2015. And then I did get on the Mandela Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders in 2016.
Cerebral palsy is a disorder of movement and posture. It is a medical condition, but there are myths around it.
What we do not understand, we will stigmatize. Because it's just cultural. And I think it's just human nature. If we don't understand something, we have to find a way to explain it. So it's either we make it a stigma issue, we make it a religious issue, we make it a demonic issue. A parent reached out to me earlier this week and said they are calling her child a snake. And I was just like, oh gosh, here we go again with this ignorance that is a part of our culture. It's just ridiculous.
In Nigeria, more than 100,000 cases of cerebral palsy are recorded yearly, reports say. 1 in every 4 children is diagnosed with the condition. Sadly, both our society and government have no adequate provisions to care for people with this condition as yet.
Our government does not have a working policy as to the management of people with disabilities generally. Now, do we have written policies? Yes, Lagos State has Lagos State Special Persons Law that was passed in 2011 that was supposed to protect the rights of persons with disabilities in Lagos State. The question is that, does that policy work? The answer is not really. Do we even have a federal law? No. We're still chasing that one across the National Assembly since 2008 or something. It's still there. It has not been passed yet. But even the state laws that have been passed can be enforced better, can be implemented better, but they are not.
Like Toby, Bisola is raising a child with same condition and of course not without the challenges and issues of stigmatization.
I've had issue with my families, saying, okay, you're the only one in this family that has given birth to a child with disability. People will tell you that it's your sin, or it's the sin of your forefathers that you are bearing. People would, come at you. They practically attack you. You can't take your child with disability out without having a stare. People stare at you like, why are you bringing this child out? This child, you should just go and lock him up. There are people that would advise you that, you can actually get medical assistance to terminate his life. Have him killed and all that. School environment is an environment where everybody comes to, where children actually learn socialization. And that is his first contact to experiencing the real world. And I discovered that they would put him in a dark corner in the school and lock the room. I go to work, I come back, where's my son, where's my son? They go to the corner and bring him out. So I observed over a period of time and I realized that, this isn't what I'm looking for. People say a lot and it can be painful, especially the persons that are the closest to you, When they look at your son and then they say, okay, where do you get this one from? What kind of thing is this? Tabirun, Obanje, all these words. Or they even make gesture of the kind of child that you've given birth to.
Helen Obiageli Oshikoya, child development clinician, has identified a gap in our society.
There's actually a school health policy of 2006, which is endorsed by UNICEF, which actually says that children should be tested, physically and mentally before going into school and subsequent to when they're actually in school. So this system allows us to create an inclusive educational system. It doesn't matter if the child actually does have a disability, the child should be given the opportunity to actually go into school.
Every child, not just cerebral palsy children, every child can learn. But some of them learn differently. What that means is that as parents, as educators, we can't put them all in one basket. We must meet them, engage them at their level, and then bring them up to some level where they're up to speed and they can go on. What this here means is that, yes, we must look at special education. And we must also look at inclusive education. But to have proper inclusion, we must prepare the child for inclusion. We must sort out the children in special education to see that, yes, they have reached a level of what we call independent living, and they have also shows a level of intellectual acuity, which means they can fit into a normal class. Then we now have to make sure that even the class, those are the students and the teachers, are prepared to accept this strange-looking person.
I do appreciate the fact that because parents don't understand things, the tendency is that they are afraid of things. So what we try to do is that subsequent to before the screening starts in that school, we have like a parent workshop whereby we can educate the parents, make them understand it is a policy, and make them understand that the screening might not apply to your child, but there are children that have issues and the parents don't know how to go about it and are, quote unquote, in denial. This helps them to face the fact, because the earlier you start, the better the outcome.
Today, Toby lives challenging the notion that those living with cerebral palsy cannot learn. She started a project called Let CP Kids Learn with one vision: to see a Nigeria where children with cerebral palsy are offered inclusive mainstream education as a first option, as a right, not as the exception that currently exists in our society. Benga Ayodada has a brother with cerebral palsy. He shares the vital role of siblings in supporting a family member living with the condition.
When we got to do, we became more tolerant of it, because there's some things that we did, the reaction to it, and those things that I did were because of his condition. But now that we knew better, that it's not his fault, we learned to empathize with him, like help him when he's walking, he's stumbling or he's wobbling. We quickly step in and help him. All of those things, we're still giving him tough love, but we became more tolerant of his excesses.
Tobiloba is someone you want to know for her abilities and not her disability.
She's a talker, as you may already know. So it was easy to look beyond that. She could do a lot of things herself. She was in the hostel for the 3 years she spent in my school, SS1 to 3. She has definitely beaten all the odds that I think most people face.
In the end, disability is a matter of perception. If you can do one thing well, you are needed by someone, and the world needs more people standing tall above disability.